It is no small task to one-up yourself in the multiplayer arena, but Joe Cecot has got to do that with Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. It's the brand new one that's coming out very soon. Joe, Call of Duty's got a very, very vaunted history with multiplayer. How do you top yourself? How do you make it better than last year's game?
It takes a ton of work. It takes a ton of focus from our team. Each year at the beginning of that next project, we kind of sit down and we take a hard look and we try and see where do we want to be in the next 3 years and what's going to push us. And this year, one of the main things that pushed us was going into the future, kind of imagining the evolution of military combat and what that would be. And that really spurred a lot of really unique design choices, unique visual choices, locales, etc.
Yeah, is it that how it starts with you guys? Do you kind of come at it from what's going to be fun in a multiplayer arena and then you build a story out of that, or does the story come first and then you build the multiplayer around that?
I think it varies. I think the different teams at IW, the story guys are going to go off and they're going to start coming up like what are different cool stories that we could work into. But IW's always been a gameplay-driven studio, and so a lot of it is like where could we go? What could we do that would give us the most opportunity for unique gameplay, but also keep us in our kind of military Call of Duty setting, fulfill that soldier fantasy.
You have 3 different teams with 3 different directions in the Call of Duty franchise. You guys sort of attack each game with 3 years sort of ahead. Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah. It used to be 2 years, and then Sledgehammer came along and they did Advanced Warfare. So now, given that games keep getting more and more complicated, we've pushed it to a 3-year development cycle. So it's given us a little bit of time to breathe in between the DLC schedule and then making the next game.
Okay.
And you can see that in Infinite Warfare. We have so much new content, more than any Call of Duty I think ever has had before, with the 6 rigs and the actually 18 essentially powerful perks. We've basically doubled our perk count, tons of weapons,
tons of customization.
Yeah.
It's kind of classes within classes in a way, right?
Yeah, you could say that for sure. Call of Duty's always been about the weapon is your class. And in this game, we really wanted to push that aspect. We wanted to look at existing playstyles in Call of Duty, and we also wanted to invent some new playstyles, and that's where the rigs came in. So players both choose their weapon and their loadouts, which drives kind of their engagement ranges, and then they choose their rig, which drives how they play.
Is there a benefit for choosing? I'm a robot guy, right? So you throw a robot in a game, I'm going to play as that robot. Is there a benefit for playing as the character of the robot, or are the characters kind of cosmetic and it's really just about the weaponry and the loadout that you choose?
Yeah. There's definitely a benefit. When you choose the Synaptic, who's our remotely controlled C6 agent, there's a set of content that's specific to that character. All of his payload options and his trait options are all about run and gunning. They're all about close quarters combat. So in choosing that character, you are now going to be influenced and pushed to close in on your opponent, to gain speed from killing enemies, to gain a quick dash in multiple directions. So that's something we really wanted to. We wanted players to kind of like take these existing playstyles that they knew and facilitate those, but also for them to see like, hey, there's other playstyles I could use. Let me hop on this other rig and try it out.
Awesome. I played some multiplayer with some vets, some people that were just killing me like crazy. It was embarrassing. I did okay in the domination mode. Is that the mode where you're sort of taking over the territories? I did all right there. The team deathmatch, I was just slaughtered. But that really sort of called to mind that people that have the Call of Duty skills from before can take those in, even though there's new mobility and new sort of options for getting around the map.
Yeah.
The skills you've learned aren't wiped off the table. You could still bring them to this new play style, right?
Yes, that's totally true. One thing we focused on with Infinite Warfare, and we do this with every Call of Duty, is we identify what our core is. We identify what's the core Call of Duty experience, and we make sure to preserve that as much as possible. And then we push new content on top of it, layer it in, making sure that it's not going to destroy or badly affect the core. So that's why you see players who they have experience in Call of Duty, they get in, the guns still feel familiar, the map design still feels familiar, so they can really leverage that prior knowledge, but then they have all these new toys, all this new content to engage in, and that hopefully will increase engagement and help them improve their game.
You guys were, universally acclaimed for Modern Warfare, and you obviously have the outcry that this is another futuristic Call of Duty game out there. Was there any sense of you guys wanted to go even further, but you kind of had to stick to the roots and the core history of Infinity Ward?
Actually, our main goal was to go just far enough, I guess is a good way to put it. We wanted to go far enough to separate ourselves from the other Call of Duty franchises and differentiate ourselves, but our whole goal is to maintain that military fantasy, that soldier fantasy. And so it was, what's the evolution of combat? What can we do that is believable, that's really cool, that players are going to love, and that, again, separates us, but keeps it feeling core, keeps it feeling like Call of Duty.
We're doing this interview right now in the Inglewood Forum right now, and there's big competitions going on around this. We're at Call of Duty XP. How much of those decisions are about esports and about making sure that there's this competitive balance so that, you know, year after year you can grow that sector of your business?
Yeah. I think each decision that we make in the development of Call of Duty has partly a foot into esports and partly a foot into public play. I think it's important each year that we keep the franchise fresh, and so we need to put in a certain layer of new mechanics that keep players interested, that keep players coming back. And we work closely with the pro players. We have them come into the office often. We'll try out new game modes with them. We'll try out new mechanics with them. And we'll take their feedback. At the end of the day, we always have the option to have certain things be base banned in esports to protect and to preserve that competitive scenario. Yeah. But it's really about building the best Call of Duty game that we can. Every time we make a new Call of Duty, we first look at the Call of Duties that came before us and we say, hey, is there anything there that works, that we can pull in and that we can improve? But we want to differentiate. With Infinite Warfare, we've introduced weapon crafting, we've introduced mission teams to add a whole new layer of progression in the game, new systems for players to engage. And the mission teams also are there to get players to engage in different ways, to play objective modes they wouldn't otherwise play, or to use certain lethals and tacticals or equipment that they wouldn't otherwise use. So it's pushing the boundaries on that content. It's adding more content that will engage users and will pull them in. I think that's how you differentiate and how you stand out.
I'm curious about the science fiction element and what that means for you guys as designers, because we're always superheroes in video games, even if they're based in World War I. Yes. But now with sci-fi, you have this, unlimited option. Is that how you guys feel when you're designing? Is that, suddenly we can put rocket packs on this and it all sort of makes sense, and it just gives you a lot more ways to stretch?
It gives us a lot of opportunities going into the future. But we're very guarded of that. We want to make sure that the things we do are believable. We want weapons to feel real. You can see all of our weapons have kind of a modern design aesthetic to them. They use real materials, metal and rubbers and different polymers. And if you look at some of our directed energy weapons, you'll notice that at a glance they look like, you're like, oh, that gun looks really cool, what is that? And you get in closer and you're like, wait a minute, this gun doesn't have a barrel, and it kind of opens up and there's no magazine there, there's a battery. Every weapon has like key elements to it, whether it be like a laser sight or a flashlight, or the weapon folds open in this way, and when it ejects the battery, you see the inner sheath come out of it, and you can see burn and deterioration on the side of it because it's overheated. All of that lends to the believability and the realism of the weapons.
Now, what's going to happen with Call of Duty from here? This is the third big science fiction Call of Duty game that we've had in a row here. Is there a move, at the sort of top level to start thinking about new directions? Are we going to have a Civil War Call of Duty? I mean, if you want to reveal something right now, you go right ahead.
Yeah, why not? I think from a dev standpoint, from a player standpoint, it's very healthy to have variation in the brand. I think with Infinite Warfare, we pushed farther into the future to try and get some separation. So I can't comment on the future and what's going to happen, but I think that that's a very good goal for the brand.
Hey, thanks for checking out that video on our EPN channel. It's just one small part of the things that we make around here. So if you liked it, don't forget to check out some of our other vids and hit that subscribe button.